Good morning.
Good morning. Okay. What? I don't know. Is this working?
Yeah, everything's working. I hear you very well, Carrie.
Oh my God. Okay, how you doing, George?
I'm doing fine, Carrie.
Oh, lovely. Okay. Well, here we are in beautiful Amsterdam. We're here with a lot of wonderful people, and Bill Ryan is here. Bill, you want to say hello?
George, hi. It's nice to hear from you again.
Wow, I'm really getting good signal now. You must have switched something. That's good.
Okay. We apologize for whatever time it is in the morning there. It must be pretty early.
How early is it, George?
Oh, it's almost 7 o'clock in the morning, so don't apologize.
Yeah, no, George is an early morning person. We know this already. So he actually is fine. So George, we want to talk to the people about what's going on here. Actually, oh, sorry. So George, they're telling me to use two mics, so I'm fooling around with this. But you want me to put what down? This one down?
Both. No, both. You have to use both. One
Use
for
both.
George and one for the audience.
Well, I would recommend
Use
you
both.
leave that one down.
This one.
You leave that one down. The other one you need.
Okay, George, can you hear me? Okay.
I hear you. You're a little distant, more distant, but I hear you. That's fine.
Okay.
This one you speak for George, and this is for the audience. So both.
Yeah, I
Maybe
hear
you
you.
should have
Okay.
that closer to you.
Well, we should have both of them close to us then.
That's okay. And I hear Bill, so everything's fine.
Okay, that's good. So what we want to do is we want to talk about the state of the planet right now, and I know that you have your pulse on really what's going on out there. So why don't you just go ahead and start off, and you can just take it for as long as you like.
Thank you. The state of the planet, geophysically, if you notice, the weather is changing all over the planet. We're having rains and heat. 105 degrees temperature, that's Fahrenheit, in Portland, Oregon for a week solid. Over 90 days over 100 degrees in Austin, Texas. It was 115 degrees in Las Vegas this week. Both of the poles are, acting weirdly, and the magnetics are changing. So, Carrie, frankly, I think that we're getting ready for some kind of big shift on that. That's from the geophysical thing. As you know, we're having floods in China and other places that they've never had before at this time. The other things that are occurring economically, probably the most important things are Monday and Tuesday this week. This coming Monday and Tuesday in London, all of the bankers are getting together because the last week, as you know, the noise was deafening. As far as China, they basically told the United States they wouldn't do anything more, and if we wanted to trade, we had to use their currency. Well, we had auctions this week, and China did not show up on it. Now, that's not in the news right now, because they're trying to keep that quiet. That means when the Treasury was trying to borrow money to keep our country going, China has been buying them. Well, they didn't. That's kind of another clue what's coming up this next week. Meanwhile, as you probably will, the Soviets, Medvedev, has basically said that NATO is going to be no more, and any more of this rattling that we have from the United States, forget it. So that's kind of a nutshell of what's occurring on that point. I'm looking at major things happening in the next 30 days. Now, the other thing is we have to remember that September 30th is our fiscal year. Our Congress has basically gone this month, but they've given away another couple $1 billion for cars just to keep people's attention going away. And this is what is occurring. In every direction we have to look at and try to sort it out to keep ourselves prepared for what's coming down. And it looks like it's going to have a global impact every place we go. As you know, you can't use the dollar anywhere in Europe. It has to be in euros. And it's just the exchange. That's the biggest problem.
Okay, George, the whole virus thing is breaking up all over the world, breaking out, so to speak, or at least that's what they're saying. I know that
both mics.
Okay, I know that they don't want me to pick up the mic here. I want you to be sure to hear me. So, anyway, we're trying to stream this over the web, by the way, so we're trying to get some internet people on the internet to be able to tune in. But what do you think about what's going on with the virus and the whole forced vaccine story?
Well, as you know, there are several people suing different agencies in the government to stop it. Most of my contacts are saying you can forget Washington, anything you want to try to do there. It has to come down to the states here. And we do know they want to try to force this vaccine for two things. Number one, to dull the kids down more. They're more directing now into the youth, the kids, and everything else to have a docile society. The older people, because of this medical thing they're talking about, they're just going to take away medical benefits in order to go. But frankly, they keep saying and they talk about there's not going to be any war. I doubt it. I still think that there war is going on and they're going to set it up. And Iran's being set up big time right now. Israel indirectly has been given permission to go after Iran, but Israel's being sustained by all of our military equipment. That's where they buy it from. Well, meanwhile, Russia, which is way ahead, has given Iran all kinds of stuff, and they're siding with the Russians, as you know. So we have that game going on. Meanwhile, the biological stuff, the threats that they're talking about around the world, the virus is kind of like another. Remember the old deal when they talked about when all the times we're going to collect about the year 2000? It's another diversion, Kerry. I'm not saying that they're not going to have it, but it's the vaccinations, and the vaccinations are being designed for certain populations, actually by race. It's everything that they're putting together right now. And there's many, when I was with my senator this last week, they're trying to go ahead and force it so in our state, where I'm in Idaho, you won't have to have the forced vaccination. Montana, there was a meeting, and I attended. This was just a couple weeks ago. Their state is going for sovereignty and forget the federal people. And the federal government, of course, is trying to override all of these things and make them this mandatory. That's just all part of this health thing. Well, that's all been, as you know, put off until September, because of Congress being adjourned for the summer. So I'm concerned about that. But I'm also concerned they're going to get a war going because they still have this population problem.
Okay, so do you think that we're also talking about the demise of the dollar very soon here?
That's what I was trying to get some information from the insiders on Monday and Tuesday from China, but China basically told the United States, period, that they're not going to do, we're going to start trading in Chinese currency. They're approaching $2 trillion. In using dollars as the money. They made the deal with Brazil. Venezuela is making deals with them. By the way, Venezuela shut down all of the talk radio programs that talk against the government. This is all yesterday.
Oh, wow. Okay. We heard that Greece is going on to forced vaccinations for the whole country. Did you hear that?
Well, there's many groups that are forming all over, and there's not enough people to police that. That forced vaccination, how are they going to make it? In the new health bill, they do have that requirement that everybody gets vaccinated. And a lot of people are fighting that. There's lawsuits that are going on, whether or not it's going to do anything. You and I both know our court system has been so corrupted. And they're basically following the line, what the politicians want. Remember I told you what politics are. Poly are many and ticks are bloodsuckers.
Okay, so George, what do you think in terms of the overall picture at the moment? I mean, what are you advising people to do?
Be with you where you are right now. You're a safer part than we are over here. This thing is coming apart so fast right in front of us. I'm leaving in 10 days for Ecuador. I'm hoping I'll be able to get on the plane without having any problems. Another friend of mine who has a lot of free energy devices, he's on the no-fly list. They won't let him on the plane.
Okay, I don't know if you happened to hear about, we had some incidents down in Barcelona at the conference. Did you hear about that?
No, I didn't hear about that at all. There's a lot of stuff about Spain that's going on right now, but I didn't hear about what happened at your conference?
Some free energy scientists that attended the conference said that Stephen Greer was threatening them behind the scenes.
Well, I've heard that from me before, but I don't know. You know, you have to look at the documents I'm getting from other sides, from all the energy people that are doing on the free alternative stuff. You know, I know our government has all the free energy devices, but they're not going to let the people have it. You know that.
Right. Well, we've got some people here that might have those devices that want to show people. We're just wondering if you think that, you know, the problem in Europe is also going to be the same as in America.
Yes, with this exception, the American people are so mesmerized by the television and the rest of it. They are so asleep, Gary. It's just unbelievable. The Europeans are more aware of what's going on than the people over here.
Okay, so as far as what you said is going to be happening Monday, what do you think is going to happen on Monday and Tuesday of next week?
Well, China's going to be making a deal somehow with all of the bankers in London and the rest of them that they move into the yuan, as you know, their currency is one of the major currencies, and somehow, you know, they got to protect themselves because they have so many, 800 billion plus of U.S. treasuries trying to protect that money. That's the reason why they've been buying all the you know, not only the companies, but also the natural resources of all the world, where everybody will take the dollar, and the dollar is just not going to be going. Now, what's going to happen is it's going to be an escalating thing. I keep bringing up September 30th, which is our fiscal year. That's when maybe some of the debt they're talking about the United States has, because they don't really know. They've admitted on television they don't know how much our debt really is. My sources are saying there's over 100 trillion, whatever that means, of derivatives that are going to be coming up due in the next 60 days. And this is all from commercial real estate, you know, the shopping centers and big hotel projects. That their loans are all coming due, and they were financed by the derivatives. Now, this is around the world, too, so it's not just the United States, but it's everywhere.
George, this is Bill here. Is it possible that America might default on its debt? Is this conceivable?
Well, there's some talk about just having the, you know, keeping the dollar only good here in the United States, and that's kind of what's going on. Yes, it will be defaulting. If it does, then the only alternative they have is to get the diversion going, and that's to get the war going. I've talked to you about that before.
Okay,
I mean, that's the logic of it is get a war going to get people diverted.
Well, when do you think that that's going to happen? I mean, you really think that we're looking at something soon in regard to their plans?
Keep watching the action between Israel and Iran and Syria and Afghanistan, because as those escalate over there, that'll be the diversion thing. Somehow they'll click it in to get the war started. And when's it going to begin? Again, following the economic thing. If we get an economic collapse, it would happen probably within, a lot of people are saying by the end of September.
Okay, what do you think about the possible travel restrictions that may be going on?
Well, the travel restrictions, that's basically putting the country into, you want to call it, a police state, and that's a great possibility. I've heard some talk with other people that we will have basically passports between states. In other words, a reason to go between states, because each of the states are going to be fighting off. The long-term result of it, the United States is going to be split up into two pieces, but I don't know when that's going to occur, Gary, right at this minute. You know, they've had plans a long time ago to have Denver as the capital of the West, and the East Coast is going to be such a mess. That's a different country anyway, as far as I'm concerned. But, you know, that's the way it runs.
Okay, Bob Dean was talking about that people were really angry, especially patriots, and he says they're gathering a lot of guns. Are you hearing anything about that?
Yes, there's a meeting that occurred this last week, just one of them we were talking about. There are 500 people, and we had like Sheriff Mack, Officer McGlam was coming over next week, and they're all talking about getting guns and stuff in order to protect themselves. The trouble is we don't have enough military over here. If you know, our military is spread out the whole world. So it's great for the UN if they come in with their troops to do something. But we have a real weird situation. People will turn in their neighbors in case they don't water their lawn or do something. It's really unbelievable how this police state can be done, and people will police themselves.
Okay, so do you want to give kind of an overview as to what you think is going on with all of this in terms of maybe a little bit longer, because we do have time, I believe. Somebody want to tell me how much time we have?
We also can take questions.
In other words, you gave a really great presentation at Vilcabamba, and these people here, would love to hear, I'm sure, from the beginning point. But how much time do we have, Marco? 10 minutes. Okay, that's not very much time. How do you feel about taking questions from the audience?
I'll take all the questions from the audience.
Okay. Do you have anything else you want to say to people before we do the questions?
Well, all I can tell people from a historical standpoint, the basis of currency all over is always flowed back to the metals. And the game is splitting up between gold and silver right now. I think silver has a bigger chance of a rise, for investing. All of these different vehicles that they've created for gold and silver investing, my suggestion is to get the physical metal because they've overplayed all of these things. In other words, they say that they have gold on deposit and it's not there. So if they do buy gold and buy silver, just remember it's just the stories of wealth. And I don't know how we're going to be trading that, frankly. I'm going to be meeting with people in a couple of weeks or so about new currencies down in Ecuador, for instance. But the South American Bank, or the Bank of the South they're talking about, is going to be put together, and I hope to be part of it.
Okay, very interesting. So we will take questions at this time from the audience.
How do you see the stock market?
How do you see the stock market? A person is asking.
Oh, that's all manipulated. About 10 minutes before the market is done every day, the plunge committee, that's 8 members of the Federal Reserve, go in and they'll buy 100 shares of a stock, and that will determine the price of the rest of them. So what they're doing is creating the illusion that everything's going up and it's all well. There's really nobody out here trading. It's only between the brokers. And unfortunately, 60% of our stock market is owned by mutual funds or investment trusts, and these are all orchestrated just by a few handful. And all you have to do is trade 100 shares of the stock, which will determine the price. So when they tell you that the Dow is going up, I mean, people don't pay any attention, but when the market dropped down the bottom, all the stocks in the Dow that were trading less than $10 were replaced. So every day, you're probably playing with a new deck of cards. And it's the old story, figures don't lie, but liars figure.
Okay, and can you say anything about the European and Asian stock market while we're on the subject?
Well, the two areas that have the potential to go up more or anything is the consumer area in India and in China. But China's trying to, they've opened up to the stock market. Remember, stock is just gambling. So that's what you're doing. If you're gambling in the market, then I would look to some of the Asian companies, but really be careful on what you're doing, period. It's better to pay attention to what's going on in your backyard, frankly.
Any other questions?
Do you see any new developments in terms of making new kinds of bartering systems with the internet?
Okay, what about new kinds of bartering systems using the internet, someone is asking?
Well, the internet is so controlled right now they can shut it down. So if you're going to be trading by the internet or talking on the internet, all that stuff can come to pass pretty quickly. Right now in the United States, we have one state that has its own bank. It's called, Bank of North Dakota. And the North Dakota Bank, they actually create their own funds. They're developed. They're used in their own state. My state representative has a bill. He's working on having our own currency in the state of Idaho. These are things I was trying to do in other places, so we have something to go along. Ecuador is on the dollar system. They're trying to go back to the sucre, and they have people meeting right now on creating their own currency also. And that's going to be what's going to happen. It's kind of like a lot of communities. You've heard of the Maui dollar and the Schenectady. It's all these different trade systems within the community. In Montana, they have it's an hourly trade type of thing, and everybody is joining in, and they probably have 2,000 to 3,000 members. The suggestion is to get into community and set up some kind of bartering within the community and some kind of things that you're going to have to work with yourself, whether it's an hour or time or some kind of. There are other systems that are working, Carrie.
Okay, and you think this is the wave of the future? I mean, you basically are still on the page, because we talked to people about your whole Ground Crew, books, and, the fact that the Pleiadians say there's not a lot of time. Are you getting information from the ETs at this time, or from higher dimensional entities that are telling you that things are still going to take a bad turn?
Here's what the message that I got, and that was to try to stay in the observer mode as the chaos increases. And boy, that's going to be frustrating, because as the chaos increases, you're going to be diverted away from trying to stay in some kind of balance. And just remember, it's a huge play. And that's the message I'm getting right now. Try to stay in the observer mode. Remember, it's a play going on, and you and I are all part of this play. But we're going to be used at some point in the future, and I don't know exactly how that's going to be, Carrie.
So why not player mode then?
I'm sorry?
So why not player mode instead of observer mode?
The player mode just sucks you deeper into the process of what's going on here. So that the idea, I believe, George, you want to help me out here. I think basically we're talking about the observer mode versus getting really wrapped up in the physicality of the material world is what George is trying to say here.
Yeah, I'm saying is be aware that the game's going on. It's going to be affecting you, but remember, we're part of the play. And you have to, the wise man gets all the knowledge he can get by following and seeing what's going on in the world from all of the things. Now, the internet is a killer, as you know, because a lot of information now is being spread on it. Now, we have to basically discern all of that. But the idea is the internet does provide you information so you can protect you and your family and stuff and find yourself. I don't know if there's any place that's going to be really safe on the planet coming up, Gary. But remember, it's part of the game. And it looks like, and frankly, it looks like we may be getting closer to an axis shift and things that are happening because of the weather disturbances. And also with the rays that are coming in from the sun are starting to affect a lot of places.
What are you hearing about the sun? Do you think it's going to become, solar cycle 24, do you think we're moving into a very active period? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with that. I was with some scientists yesterday, and we were discussing the same thing on what the rays were hitting the planet right now and how they're affecting everything. We got trees dying. Well, where we are, this is, as you know, August 1st right now. But we got trees that are already starting to change the colors.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay, go ahead.
Will this be affecting our DNA on any level?
Someone is asking, will this be affecting our DNA on any level?
Well, not really. Remember, the DNA is just a physical programming of your body, and there are ways to change the DNA. Our scientists have that ability. I don't think that's going to affect anything at this minute because it takes a little bit of time. It's not an instant change.
Okay.
From an ET standpoint, I asked the questions about the DNA, and they said the DNA is programmed, as you know, at the moment of conception between the sperm and the egg, and it's all programmed between the two parents of the fetus that's coming into the world. So the changes that are coming in that they're trying to change on the DNA is by injecting you with some of these vaccines in order to basically dull us down to make us more dumb people, as you know.
Okay, we're hearing a lot of suspicious activity around the idea of taking Tamiflu and things like that. Are you hearing anything about that?
Well, there's no evidence that Tamiflu has any incidence of improving anybody's health.
Thank you for your dry humor as usual, George.
Oh, it's true.
Yeah,
You look it up,
absolutely.
pull up Tamiflu, doesn't do anything. It's a good thing for the chemical, or the pharmaceutical companies to make money.
Okay, go ahead.
I've seen some films on the internet about these FEMA camps, FEMA concentration camps. Does he know something about it?
Well, he was asked to build one, but, okay, the FEMA concentration camps, someone is asking about. They want to know, are you aware of them?
Well, I have a contract. I was asked to build one. And it was built, by the way, in Las Vegas, just off a highway, on the interstate highway. They did build it, and they're building it. And when I gave the information to my contract, because I gave it to Ted Gunderson, the former head of the FBI for Southern California, he came back and he said they're building them all over the country. And I've got evidence of people calling me, and actually I've seen pictures of them, all over the place. So they are getting ready for that.
Why is South America a good safe haven?
Oh, why is it? Okay, why is South America a good safe haven?
No population, no major population. What they had is set up. The biggest problem, and these are the meetings that I sat in, they were planning on using nuclear war in the northern hemisphere. And the winds come from the North Pole, and they hit the equator, and very little of it spills over to the southern hemisphere. As you know, the winds reverse as you go to the southern hemisphere. So if we have nuclear radiation, it's like going to Tugumska, Siberia, for instance. They still have radiation from that nuclear explosion, and it's still around there. I mean, they don't report it, but that's what's going on. The radiation in the air will affect people on the long term. Well, the northern hemisphere will, the way their plans are, when they get the nuclear war going, as China says, you told Bush, actually, publicly, he says, you don't know how many nuclear weapons we have. And they tell you on the news that, well, the Soviets have about 22,000. They tell you maybe 5,000. But they had 22,000. The United States has about 12,000. Now, I know that from a personal thing, because my son's a nuclear physicist who spent 3.5 years in the secret city in Russia, which is, reporting that they're about 12 years ahead of us, the United States, as far as nuclear-wise. But anyway, the plans are, as you know, were to use all means necessary. Well, biologicals are obviously cheaper to get rid of people. Remember, we still have the same problem. We're increasing a couple 100,000 people a day. And when you go to my website, I have what I call a population clock. It tells you how many people we're adding to the planet with 6.8 billion people on it.
Okay, well, how's it looking, like if we were to look in terms of from now through 2012 up to 2017, can you talk about what you think is going to be the state of the planet?
Well, China's going to end up taking over Australia, New Zealand, basically, all those islands over there, and actually with Japan, too. It'll be all one big area for that end. Russia, and they're kind of setting back. Their military documents I have said that, look, it's 5,000 years, it's our turn to run the world. They're expecting the West to go ahead and get into this, the World War III. From the extraterrestrial standpoint, the information says that we're going to go into World War III and it's going to last a few years. I've got those documents, actually. And then we're going to go into something else, but we'll have a couple years of a hiatus and then begin another one, which is not good to look at. But I'm just saying, for the current thing, all I have to do is look and see what's happening on the planet. And most of us live in what I call a financial world. You got to live down where my money is and how am I going to be able to buy goods. Well, or trade, and trading is what we're talking about right now. The planet's environment, however, is being so polluted. Now, Kerry, you just flew over. I mean, you can't go around the world right now without having the pollution in the air anywhere, even over the oceans. There are 25,000 jet airplanes in the air every hour running around the planet right now between 30 and 40,000 feet. Did you know that?
No, but I believe you.
You know, every cruise ship and every cargo ship is using 1 gallon of fuel every second. every second. So you can imagine what we're doing to the environment on that basis. The concrete industry throughout the world is one of the bigger pollutants because when it's making the concrete that we get, the pollutants go up in the air. Then you have half of the United States as being, its energy is from coal. Well, you already know in China, some of the places, coal is being mined so bad you can't even see the air during the daytime. So we have an environmental problem. You're asking me what's going to happen in 20 years from now. We're just going to escalate this thing because of the population increase. Now, when I was in Washington, D.C., and down at the World Watch Institute and the Population Institute, I was going over their data. There's no way we can sustain the game that we're playing right now. And that's the reason why I'm trying to stay, as you are, in the observer mode. And I kind of saying, hey, I'm going to follow the lead. I mean, why did the Rockefellers build the Pine Gap project down in Australia? Why did Ted Turner buy, 11,000 acres in Argentina? Even George Bush bought a bunch of property down in Paraguay.
Okay, well, what are you saying in terms of what might people do about all of this? Besides stay in the observer mode, you're advising them to basically build communities?
Stay in community, not build one that you can focus on. The people that have focused small, there's a lot of communities around. In other words, they set themselves up in isolation and say, here I am, but all you've done is make yourself a target. You're better to live in a small place and then try to get other people of like minds, so when this thing really comes apart, you can share the knowledge with others. That way you don't make yourself a target.
Okay, so would you also, what about the idea of staying mobile? Okay.
Well, I'm about as mobile as you can get, and I think it's a good thing to do that. If you're able to be able to do it. But that does, as you know, it takes economic standard. Where are we going to be going, and where are we going to have it while we can? If you can get, more than one passport, it would help. The United States, of course, is the trigger point. I mean, it's unbelievable what people are doing right now and checking on things.
Okay, go ahead. I'm actually being told that we have 1 minute left. Is there a message?
Well, ask me a question, or all I can do is tell thanks for all of your people over there for standing by waiting for me to do things. I go to my website. We're redesigning it, and I'll try to put more new information on it. And my website's nohoax.com, nohoax.com.
Nohoax.com is his website. Is there a positive message you could tell people just before you sign off here?
The positive thing is that we have people like Bill and Carrie that are willing to go out and help alert people, putting stuff on the internet and the internet.
Okay, thank you for the plug. I have one last question. I don't even know if we have time for this, but I'd like to know. Billy Meyer talked about what he got from the Pleiadians was there were going to be robots and robot wars. Have you gotten any information about that for the future?
Well, that's future. Yeah, but we're doing that right now electronically. That's the computer games. They're having fights with computers. I mean, that's what's happening right now. Today, for instance, there's a big lawsuit filed against Skype, trying to get them off the air. That's kind of a computer war, isn't it, or robots?
Well, yeah, considering we're talking on Skype right now. And that's what makes this kind of communication across, from Europe to America very possible for people without a lot of funds. So if they're attacking Skype, they're attacking our communication.
That's exactly right. And that indirectly, if you're looking about physical robots, yeah, they have physical robots that doing basically our jet planes, where they're showing you we're sending out planes right now over Afghanistan. They're unmanned. Isn't that a robot?
Absolutely.
And from the satellite, they can control the entire planet on these things, and they don't tell you what they're doing on these satellites. We're spending billions going up in the satellites. What's really the purpose?
Okay, George, do you want to explain to people what it is you do with your mission? Because your mission is kind of to wake people up. So your positive message, I have to say, is in your books. Wouldn't you say that?
Yeah, I would say that exactly. It's basically responsibility on an individual basis, Carrie, and get people, spread the knowledge to wake them up, to get them out of with the programming away from things. And that's the hardest job in the world, is how do you wake people up to get them. Now, my message from the ETs, you have to understand these books, the handbook and its series, are basically deprogramming devices. There's your ultimate computer right there. When you read these books 2 or 3 times, your whole attitude changes because we're reprogramming the way you think.
Okay, thank you very much, George Green. We really do appreciate it. I believe we're out of time.
Yes.
Yeah, everything's working. I hear you very well, Carrie.
Oh my God. Okay, how you doing, George?
I'm doing fine, Carrie.
Oh, lovely. Okay. Well, here we are in beautiful Amsterdam. We're here with a lot of wonderful people, and Bill Ryan is here. Bill, you want to say hello?
George, hi, it's nice to hear from you again.
Wow, I'm really getting good signal now. You must have switched something. That's good.
Okay, we apologize for whatever time it is in the morning there. It must be pretty early.
How early is it, George?
Oh, it's almost 7 o'clock in the morning, so don't apologize.
Oh, yeah, no, George is an early morning person. We know this already. So he actually is fine. So George, we want to talk to the people about what's going on here.
Good morning.
Good morning. Okay. What? I don't know. Is this working? Really what's going on out there? So why don't you just go ahead and start off, and you can just take it for as long as you like.
Thank you. The state of the planet, geophysically, if you notice, the weather is changing all over the planet. We're having rains and heat. 105 degrees temperature, that's Fahrenheit, in Portland, Oregon for a week solid. Over 90 days over 100 degrees in Austin, Texas. It was 115 degrees in Las Vegas this week. Both of the poles are, acting weirdly. And the magnetics are changing, so Carrie, frankly, I think that we're getting ready for some kind of big shift on that. That's from the geophysical thing. As you know, we're having floods in China and other places that they've never had before at this time. The other things that are occurring economically, probably the most important things are Monday and Tuesday this week. This coming Monday and Tuesday in London, all of the bankers are getting together because the last week, as you know, the noise was deafening as far as China. They basically told the United States they wouldn't do anything more, and if we wanted to trade, we had to use their currency. Well, we had auctions this week, and China did not show up on it. Now, that's not in the news right now because they're trying to keep that quiet. That means when the Treasury was trying to borrow money to keep our country going, China has been buying them. Well, they didn't. And that's kind of another clue what's coming up this next week. Meanwhile, as you probably well, the Soviets, Medvedev, has basically said that
Actually, oh, sorry. So George.
Both.
Okay. They're telling me to use two mics, so I'm fooling around with this, but you want me to put what down? This one down?
No, both. You have to use both. One
Use
for
both.
George and one for the
Hearing you
audience.
well, I would recommend
Use
you
both.
leave that one down.
This one?
You leave that one down, the other one you need.
Okay, George, can you hear me okay?
I hear you. You're a little distant, more distant, but I hear you. That's fine.
Okay,
This one you speak for George, and this is for the audience. So both.
yeah, I
Maybe
hear
you
you.
should have
Okay,
that closer to you.
well, we should have both of them close to us then.
That's okay. And I hear Bill, so everything's fine.
Okay, that's good. So what we want to do is we want to talk about the state of the planet right now, and I know that you have your pulse on